This is episode 14 of Youthful Perspectives. I'm your host, Mason Beerbaum. My guest today is a seeker of truth and a source of wisdom who goes by the name of Doug Lennick. Doug has made a career off his unrelenting drive to better himself and the people around him through a variety of means and professions. Beginning as a salesman and a financial advisor, Doug quickly learned tools to maximize the most out of his subordinates through innovative tactics he developed over decades of implementation. Eventually, Doug became a key advisor to the CEO of American Express, aiding the company in growing its revenue and allowing both their clients and workers attain financial independence. Following this, Doug created Think to Perform, an endeavor that promotes values-based decisions that can enhance businesses and individuals in improving themselves and their service for others. Throughout all of this, Doug has also written 7 books about a variety of topics we discussed in this episode. If you're interested in these books or would like to discover your personal values, there'll be links in the description. The wisdom Doug shares in this conversation is truly worth pondering. I always learn so much whenever I have a chance to talk with Doug, and this time was no different. I hope this will be the same for you. And now, here is Doug Lennick. All right, thank you, Doug, for joining me today. We'll start off with an overview of your childhood and adolescence.
Well, I was born in western North Dakota. I was born in Dickinson, North Dakota, although I didn't live there. My family actually lived in a little town called Hebron. Some people pronounce it Hebron, but it's Hebron out there. And that's where I was born and raised initially. Spent a minute in Idaho, back to North Dakota, and spent a lot of years going to different schools. It was interesting. So I went to, we didn't have things like preschool and kindergarten for, some people might have, but we didn't. And so I went to 8 schools in 12 years.
Wow.
So yeah, the longest stint I had was high school. And by high school, I'd moved to Minnesota and went to Redwood Falls High School, now called Redwood Valley.
When you were growing up, what values did your parents instill in you?
Well, one of the things that I kind of grew up understanding, because Western North Dakota is rural America and it's farm country. Mm-hmm. And in cities, they decide that, companies like say we're going to be open 24/7. When you grow up in the country, it's 24/7. So I grew up knowing that, the cows needed to be milked every day. Mm-hmm. The chickens laid eggs. You didn't have to pick them up, but if you didn't, somebody else would.
Right. Exactly.
And so on. And so just the notion that work is meaningful. Mm-hmm. And so part of what I got out of being young is I discovered the joy of work, and so now I've got a couple of little grandkids and even though it's ridiculous, I take my grandson Conroy, he's 4 years old, and dig dandelions with him, just the old fashioned way, just so he can have fun doing the work. Mm-hmm. Now you can modernize it later, but let's learn that work itself is kind of fun. And that's what I learned.
So
that's one thing.
A lot of the meaning of work and responsibility. Do you think finding joy in work is a American concept, or is that a universal concept?
I think it's a universal concept. I think losing the joy is an American concept.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think a lot of Americans have lost the joy. In fact, this is what I think, Mason. I think that we are led to believe that we're supposed to work for a while so we don't have to work. Mm-hmm. So they literally created businesses around the concept of, thank God it's Friday, right. And we're open all week so you can enjoy the weekend. Let's shorten the work week. Let's work less. Well, what happens is when the human animal works less, its sense of fulfillment is lessened.
Yeah, diminished.
So so I'm less. I have less meaning. Mm-hmm. So I've had the good fortune to know Richard Leider. I know Richard Leider, who wrote the book Power of Purpose, studied under Viktor Frankl, believe it or not. Yep. And when he just recently posted some work, which is phenomenal, and it's called The Rise of purpose anxiety, which what she's basically saying is people are sitting around, they don't know what is my purpose, and people retire and they were doing something that they thought was meaningful, and then they were told all their lives, this is going to be great. You won't have to do anything. And it's not great. Mm-hmm. Doing nothing is not great. And when you're led to believe it is, and you're miserable when you're doing nothing, you think to yourself, I can't imagine how miserable I would be if I also had to work.
Right.
Because I don't even have to do anything and I'm miserable.
Right.
And that's why you're miserable, by the way, because you're doing nothing.
Yeah, exactly. That's one thing I kind of found that indirectly almost this last winter break. I was home in my hometown for like 40 days and I had nothing to do. Like for those 40 days, I didn't have a job at the time and I didn't have school. So I would just wake up and just sit on the couch, just watch Ken Burns documentaries or go walk outside or something. And I ended up getting like anxiety just from idleness.
Yes, exactly right.
Because I had nothing to look forward to, nothing to work towards, even though I was like in the lull of fall semester, spring semester. Still 40 days of idleness.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine doing 4 years of idleness or however long I'd hypothetically you'd be retired for. Some people it's 20 years, 30 years of retirement.
Oh, yeah, much, much longer. People are retired now longer than they worked. Mm-hmm. In many cases. It's incredible. But when retirement was first, or the concept of Social Security was first brought here in the 30s, and it was imported from Germany. And the concept was, the Industrial Revolution, Germany was like major player.
Yeah.
But the body wears out. Mm-hmm. And so they thought, well, these are people that we shouldn't just throw away, but they can't work anymore. Let's give them some security. So they provided security, and then they died a couple days later. I mean, it was literally, and then we started retirement age 65 at a time when you weren't supposed to live much longer than that anyway, and so it worked. Well, now what's happening is people want to retire earlier, and they're living longer. There are more and more centenarians all the time. My mother-in-law is 95, still lives in her own home, remarkably, has a daughter that lives with her. But she's, fantastic. I'm going to go out there, and she and I share a passion for Louis L'Amour Western books. So
that's great.
I mean, and so what I got from my family was that. And then one of the big lessons I got, Mason, was a lesson on integrity. Behavioral integrity. So, I've come to learn that integrity is more than not lying. Mm-hmm. Not lying, I discovered, was as easy as not speaking.
It's very true. Hard to lie when you don't talk.
Yeah, exactly right. However, my mother taught me the difference when I was, I'm going to say 5, maybe 6 years old. So we're living in Little Hebron, North Dakota. Had we go to the store one day, and we go into the store, and I come out of the store, and I get in the back seat where I'm supposed to sit, and I'm chewing on a piece of candy. And my mom turns and looks, and she says, "Hey, where'd you get the candy?" I said, "In the store." She said, "Where'd you get the money to pay for the candy?" I didn't say anything. Didn't lie at all. She said, "Where'd you get the money?"
Repeat the question.
Yeah, let me ask you again until we get an answer here. Well, I just took the candy. I didn't pay for it.
Yeah. She
said, "Well, we're going to go back in there, and you're going to pay for it." And I said, "Nah, I prefer not."
Yeah, right.
I'm in the opt-out clause of that deal.
Yeah.
She goes, "Oh no, we're going in. I'll be there with you, so I'll actually watch you do it and see what happens."
That's a great life lesson, right?
Oh, yeah. So I walked in, stood at the counter, looked up, and handed the guy a nickel. Probably was a penny thing at the time, and said, "I took this candy."
It's a good life lesson for a kid. I mean,
I still remember it.
Exactly. All these years later, it still brings back memories.
And that's behavioral integrity and what I believe in. And that doesn't, because I'm human, just like a lot of other humans, I make mistakes. So I don't believe in the perfection. It doesn't happen. My business philosophies are pretty basic. Accept whatever the facts are now, make them better, and then remember there's no end to better. And that's a life philosophy. There is no end to better. That's what makes aging fun. I'm just getting better at being me. I've got more practice. And I should want to get better at being me. Being me is hard. I say this in leadership development. I say if you want to learn to be a leader, you got to first learn how to manage yourself. Mm-hmm. The only person, most managers think they're then leaders. Leaders are chosen by followers. Managers are appointed by people who have the authority to appoint them, including themselves if they're the owner of the franchise. Right. I appoint myself in charge. Mm-hmm. Okay. You may not have any followers, but you are the manager. So here's what we say in leadership. There's only one person that you have a chance to manage in your life. One, and it's you. Mm-hmm. And it's a slim chance. Because of our humanity, we're going to make mistakes. Our emotions are going to sometimes stimulate us to compromise our most deeply held values. Mm-hmm. I have been morally intelligent and morally incompetent in this exact same moment. Mm-hmm. Meaning, I knew what was right. I knew what was wrong. I did the wrong thing anyway, because in the moment I valued the outcome of doing the wrong thing more than I thought the outcome I would get if I did the right thing.
Yeah. It's a delayed gratification and not succumbing to the whatever it happens to be.
Well, that too, and that's an emotional competence, mm-hmm. The old marshmallow.
Yeah, it was at Stanford University, right?
Yeah.
The psychology department.
It's a great story, and it speaks to the role emotions play, that desire to get it, and the ability to, and those emotions. So I think of, everybody's got their own way of looking at life. And in recent years, everybody seems to like the Mount Rushmore metaphor. So
I certainly do.
Yeah. So I and everybody's got their own Mount Rushmore of athletes and mm-hmm. movie stars and singers and whatever.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I got a Mount Rushmore of gifts. Would you like to hear them?
Absolutely.
Here we go. I set you up. How could you say no?
Exactly. He's a natural podcast guest right here.
Exactly right. How could you say no? 4 gifts on Mount Rushmore. First, one, and this is one that escaped me for a few years. I didn't realize it all the time. I have most of the time, but life itself is a gift. And one can debate where it came from, whatever, and you can have your own philosophy on that. But I think it's a gift. And if I treat it as such, it works better. When I treat it less well, it works less well. Mm-hmm. Second is a gift of a conscience. Humans, 8.2 plus billion people now in the world, all over the world, more than 8,200,000,000 people and growing, have a conscience. This is not peculiar to a culture, to an ethnic group. All humans have a conscience. Conscience basically says to you, I know right, I know wrong. We learn that early on. There's a nature-nurture thing going on. Mm-hmm. Not shockingly, we have a nature to learn language. We're born to be lingual. Mm-hmm. That does not mean we're born speaking. Mm-hmm. If we never had anybody around us who spoke, we would not learn the language. And if I was born in China, I would probably not be speaking English. Mm-hmm. When I grew up Western North Dakota, I learned German and English before school, and at school was denied, no longer can use German. But that was then. Mm-hmm. Now they want you to learn multiple languages. Then English only. I would suggest multiple languages is a little better. But I get the concept of English only. I just disagree with it.
Yeah.
And so that gift of a conscience, right, wrong, the gift of free will, and free won't. So here's the deal, Doug. Here's right, here's wrong, if you'd like, for expedience reasons or whatever your reasons are, you can go ahead and do the wrong thing. And I'll give you a little temptation just in case, because I'll see if I can tempt you and the emotions that you feel and those temptations, to be able to deal with those, delay your gratification.
Right.
I might not be able to pull that off. So that's the fourth gift, the gift of emotions. And that was simply designed by the designer to kind of muck it up so that we could make life a little more challenging, and that we could learn how to pull all those things together in the service of someone besides ourselves. We're supposed to learn, I believe, that we're not here for us. We're here for the other folks.
I agree. That's why you have such a strong connection, I would assume, to your kids or people within your direct family or your community. Or very social beings as well. A strong connection to the group and not just ourselves. Though sometimes some people are more prioritize themselves than others, but more or less, I feel like if you have a kid, you're going to have just that strong bond with your kid.
Well, yeah. Well, and get to know them as an individual. So, I think of yourself. You actually know what your values are. What are they?
They are. Let me pull them up here. I have them written down just for this very question. So
I knew you might. I didn't know that, but I was guessing you might.
Yes. No, I knew if I'm going to interview Doug, I got to be prepared to list my values. I'm glad I wrote them down. And this we could probably talk about later on how to identify them through the values card trick that you guys have developed here. But for my top 5 values that I have discovered recently, this was probably in the last 2 months when I last did the exercise, is the first one being integrity, happiness, relationships, health, and education. And those are more or less ranked in importance too. Because you might do something with integrity, doesn't mean you're going to be happy about it too.
Right. No, that's right. That's right. I like that, how you said that. So, and what you also said when you talked integrity, you talked about behavioral integrity. You might have to do something with integrity that doesn't make you happy in the moment. Exactly. But talk about happiness. You say that's number 2 on your list.
Yeah, happiness for me. I feel like that's everyone's striving to be happy. And I remember I was listening to your podcast that you recorded with Don McPherson before I came here today, and how happiness is a state of mind, not a state of being. I believe
not a state of affairs.
Not a state of affairs. So you can decide to be happy or not be happy.
Well, and what I have found is happiness is a state of mind contingent upon us being true to our values. So like when you have integrity, you are happier. You mentioned relationships as a third one, I believe.
Yep, that's correct. That was the third one.
Yeah. So talk about that, because it's interesting, by the way, we happen to have data, I think, to perform global data. You've identified already 3 of the top 5 values in the world, with number 1 being family in the world, all over the world, not just here in Minnesota where we grew up with Garrison Keillor and we're all above average.
Exactly. Exactly.
We're more than that. So, but that's number 1 in the world. Number 2 in the world is health. Number 3 in the world is happiness, which is on your list. Relationships and friendships round out the top 5.
Yeah.
People care about people, and it's and that's kind of exciting. But
for me, when it comes to relationships, that can go in a variety of different directions. Because I view what we have, you and I, as a relationship of sorts. What I have with my family is a relationship. What I have with my friends is a relationship. Yeah. What I have with going to the weight room is, you could argue, is a relationship with the weight room. Yeah, it's a place for me to get better. Yeah. Or at work, I have my colleagues that I work with at the cafe that I work at right now. There's a relationship there. And so when I make this top 5, because there's so many to pick from when you do the exercise, it's like, how can I be productive with my choices, sort of deal. So with relationships, you get friendship, you get family, you get all these other things rolled up into one.
And that's what some people do, is they bundle them together. Right. Yeah. So.
Yeah, because when I view integrity, I could view integrity as in a sense of like having my body be in integrity, in the sense of like being healthy and what I consume and what I do with it. That's a form of integrity as well.
Well, in the conversation we're having now, we should have either with somebody out loud or with ourselves so that we're talking to ourselves or somebody about what do we mean. Because one of the things you said about relationships that caught my attention, I really appreciated it, is you talked mostly about relationships with people, but you also said, I can have a relationship with the weight room. I can, and see what's important when one gets to know another person. Think about trust. One of the best ways I have discovered over time to build trust, it's a 3-step process. It's self-awareness, which is become aware of what I care about. Self-disclosure, become open to disclose it. And discovery, discover what other people care about. And what you will find is in that discovery and sharing process, the self-disclosure and discovery process, you begin to discover, wow, we have a lot more in common. And we've seen that with the Future Leaders Academy, where we have kids from the rural areas come into kids that, are growing up in the cities and have not, some of them, been to a farm.
Right.
They haven't picked up the egg. I milked a cow.
Exactly.
So I actually know how that happens.
My mom has a good idea because she's a teacher out in a rural area of Minnesota, and she says they should do some sort of program where they can bring kids in the rural areas and have them go down to like a school in the cities for a week, and then have kids from the cities come up to a rural area and go to high school for a week, and or an elementary school perhaps or something, and just get that whole different dynamic going on there.
Yeah, it's absolutely, and that learning from other experiences is, a lot of us aren't as good as we would like to be at learning from others. We get less good at that as adults. So 70% of adult learning is experiential. And most people, Socrates once said that and Socrates, by the way, never wrote anything down because then...
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah. Yeah, back then you'd get imprisoned for writing stuff down, but people wrote his stuff down later.
Thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully. And Socrates once said that smart people learn from everything and everybody. Average people learn from experiences, their own experiences. And stupid people already know everything.
That's a good way to look at it.
And that's what Socrates.
Well, I think that's a great philosophy because that can you can learn not only from people but from certain things. I know I have a great admiration for Steve Jobs and this Apple.
Yeah.
And how when they're designing their computers, I have an Apple MacBook in front of me right now. You'll never see something at a 90-degree angle because according to Steve Jobs in his education throughout life, there's no such thing as a 90-degree feature in nature. And so therefore, all the corners on a MacBook are going to be rounded off sort of deal. So that's an example of learning from nature. Yeah. And all the other things that you can learn from nature too, about how each year the leaves will fall off, get super cold, and then they'll eventually, slowly but surely, grow back anew, stronger than ever. It's like patience, I feel like, is another lesson that you can learn from nature. So there's so many things that you can learn from, not just from people.
Yeah. Well, and see, you've got you're a man in pursuit of wisdom, which is reminds me of my evolving thinking about wisdom, my current thought on it, and it's been a thought for quite a while, it's that wisdom and patience. I mean, wisdom is urgency and patience and reconciling when, and I've characterized it as this: inside of oneself, imagine there's a dance that's going on. Inside of that dance. Cat Stevens sang about it in Father and Son. Right. But inside of that dance is the one party is patience, and the other party is urgency. Absolutely. And they're dancing, and the wisdom is having the judgment to determine which of the parties should lead the dance. So there are dances in your life when urgency should lead. And there are dances in your life when patience should lead. And what you're doing, which is remarkable and I love watching it happen, is you're actually using your wisdom to sort that out in your own life. And one of my good friends who runs a company out of Detroit is the Hans Group, and his name's John Hans. And he always tells people, and I brought him into the business years ago, into the financial services industry, and he always reminds people that they ought not be late for their own life. And most people are a little late, and sometimes we accidentally are tardy. Mm-hmm. or sometimes we're absent altogether and we don't show. We have no show days. But the thing is that there's no timeouts.
Yeah.
So and that's okay. And it doesn't mean we should be working all the time. What it means is we should be intentional about what you said. Like you could have integrity with your body. I could be intentional about resting.
Yeah.
So I actually am not going to, just work. I'm going to sleep so that when I work better.
Yeah. Quality over quantity of work right there.
Yeah. And quality and quantity when necessary.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me too, when you're talking about the dichotomy between urgency and patience.
Yes.
I know Leonardo da Vinci, he would lose so many commissions during his life because he would just take years upon years to finish one piece of work that he was getting paid to do. And they're like, we need this right here, right now. I believe like the Mona Lisa, he worked on that for over 10 years, maybe even over 15 years. And it was that patience in making sure every fine detail was made basically to perfection, some would say.
Yeah.
And in the long run, that's considered the greatest painting of all time.
Yeah.
So it's maybe people would appreciate it a little bit more urgency on his part, but I think it worked out pretty good for him having that patience. But again, you need to have the urgency in life too, because if you're in a bad situation, like if a bear's coming at you in the woods when you're admiring nature and you're trying to learn lessons from nature, you want to not be patient on your response. You want to act with some urgency.
Well, actually, that's an interesting one, because one of the things that we talk about in becoming better at being ourselves is learning how to deal with our emotions. And encountering a bear in the wild will be an emotional moment. It was for me. I've only had it happen once.
Same here.
So, yeah. And so for me, it happened at the end of a portage. And after myself and my partner had gotten into the canoe, I was in the stern, he was in the bow. Mm-hmm. And then the bear's coming out of the woods and entering the water where we were, maybe 30 feet away from shoreline, and we were not far away.
Wow.
So we had just gotten into our canoes. Now, my partner was not yet an experienced canoeist, and he was starting to get up, and I said, please remain seated. This is a good
Don't
time.
rock the boat.
And, and I did it was an aluminum canoe, luckily, and so I get the get loud, get big.
Yep.
And the bear just retreated, which was wonderful, but my heart was pumping. So when we talk about this in the money world, for example, we will talk about emotional intelligence, and I'll even say this to people. The thing about emotional intelligence applies to everything, but it also applies to how people handle their money, and it helps us understand why otherwise smart people will do dumb things with their money. But what happens is we think about emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is real, and it's independent from cognitive intelligence, which is such a difficult concept for most people to realize. So one's emotional intelligence exists independent from your cognitive intelligence. Mm-hmm. And it was here before your cognitive intelligence.
Right.
It's a first responder. So emotional intelligence is real. It sacrifices accuracy for speed, but it's real, and so we have to know that. And then when it comes to like our money, it can't tell the difference between a bear market, which a lot of people don't want to have that are investors. Not anything anybody who's not an investor worries a heck of a lot about. But bear markets are when the markets are tanking. And bear markets scare investors. And bears scare people. So one's emotional intelligence, I can't tell if it's a bear market and I'm scared. My emotions don't discern the difference between bear market bear. Both bears are stimulating fear.
Right.
Now, fear is a form of intelligence meant to tell us something. If I'm afraid, it suggests I might be in danger. Biologically, we are wired to survive. And so when we feel fear, what happens is biologically, our emotional intelligence registers fear. It sends a message to the physical habit centers of the brain, and it says, scared here, could be in trouble, cortisol, whatever you need, send it up.
Adrenaline,
Yeah, whatever it is, let's send it up. But they'll send up specifically, like cortisol in specific will help cloud cognitive thinking. So if you could think of cognitive thought as the sun, and then think of your emotions as the moon, if your emotions are intense enough, what you get is an eclipse, a partial eclipse. Based on the intensity of the emotion, the more total the eclipse.
Yeah.
And if you're scared enough, angry enough, intense enough, you're down to a couple of choices. And this is where fight or flight syndrome comes in. Should I be running? Now, by the way, an irrational response to running from the bear in the woods, or an irrational response is running from the bear.
Right. Depending on the bear, right?
Yeah.
Or just any bear, I guess.
Any bear's faster than me.
That's true.
Now, if you're running with me, you say, no, Doug, you speak at my services. Doug was a great guy. I really liked him. He just was a little slow.
A little too slow. That's right.
He couldn't make it. And so it's really important. And the younger we are to learn about learning how to deal with emotions. You being an athlete, the beautiful thing about an athletic event is you will run the range of emotions from in the locker room to warm-ups to back in the locker room after the game, handshakes and so on. And from what you're feeling in the locker room before you go out for warm-ups, what you feel during the warm-ups, what you feel during competition, what you feel whether you won or lost, and afterwards, and about your personal performance and how you feel in the locker room. You cover a lot in those couple hours.
Absolutely.
And that's the premium. And so what we have said in our program, which I've been blessed to be involved with the Minnesota Metro Stars, Ray Finley and I started the program 20 plus years ago. It would be 28 years ago now. Our most famous alum are his daughter, Kelly, who's now head coach at University of Florida.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Paige Beckers, who now is a basketball player still.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
And so in my office, you got, thank you, Doug Shoes. I had nothing to do with it, but I thank you, Paige.
Yeah. If Paige Beckers is listening to this, that's when we know we're doing good right here. But she's probably a little busy with her professional.
I'll send it to her and just say, hey, you were again referenced.
There you go. No. Absolutely.
But she's wonderful. And so, and her coaches, Brian Cosgriff and Tara Starks, these are extraordinary people who are helping people learn to deal with their emotions. And what I've said and I don't do it anymore, but when I used to address the young ladies that are playing in our program from ages 11 on up through high school, is I would say success on the court is necessary but not sufficient. What we really need to learn are the lessons that the sport teaches us. It's not just how to play the sport, it's how to live life.
Yep, 100%. That's why I'm so keen on and emphasizing the importance of sports, because whether it's in elementary, middle school, high school, collegiate or professional, the life lessons that sports can teach you. I mean, I'd argue I would be a completely different person if I didn't have high school, middle school athletics growing up.
Me too, and that's one of the reasons we started the Minnesota Metro Stars. There was fewer opportunities, you can imagine. For when I was growing up, until very end of my high school era, the girls were allowed to be cheerleaders. You could try out for the cheerleaders, which is athletic,
Right?
and it is a sport, but it wasn't looked at as a sport then. Now it is.
Yeah.
Now
Same with like dance too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those at that time, it wasn't thought about as a sport. You might think, well, you guys were stupid. Well, we probably were.
That's a self-awareness. Right?
Yeah, that is. And absent self-awareness, we're in trouble.
Right.
And you have understood that at a remarkably young age, luckily for you. And now you're consciously competent, which is why you've decided to have a podcast and share that you don't have to be old to be wise, and you don't necessarily get wisdom just because you're old. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people who've done 1 year of experience 10, 20, 30 times. Like, God, you've been at it for 30 years. No, I've done the same thing for 30 years.
Yeah.
30 times over and over again. That didn't gain much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like my worst nightmare. That's one of my greatest fears, is just like complacency within your professional career. Like I could never just clock in to a 9 to 5. Nothing against clocking into a 9 to 5, but I can't just sit there and just do repetitive tasks day in, day out for 30 years. No. I would go insane probably, but hopefully won't find out.
No. Well, what you're going to do is you're going to figure out ways to harness your gifts and offer them to the world at a price the world values greater than your cost. Mm-hmm. That's the creation of a business. Mm-hmm. I can, whatever it costs you to do a podcast, if you can create revenue streams that are greater than that cost, that justify your use of time, that becomes business.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that's what everybody does. Mm-hmm. And one of the things, and I've been a serial entrepreneur, so I never thought of it as, I never even knew, I don't suppose, the word. I don't know. But when I was in college, I went a couple of years at Minnesota Morris. Tremendous experience there. Played football for a couple of years there. Was never higher than number 2 on the depth chart. Yep. At my position. So I was number 2 a lot, but I learned a lot, played behind a great guy, Mike Gallagher, and learned so much in the sport. But I wanted to be a teacher and a coach. And somebody pointed out to me in my sophomore year that there weren't enough kids. The baby boom had ended a long time ago. Mm-hmm. What? Nobody told me.
Right.
So we didn't know that. I was just living. Mm-hmm. There weren't enough kids. And now you've seen it. All these schools, like I went to Redwood Falls High School. Now it's Redwood Valley. All those little towns around there in the valley, they had their own high schools. Mm-hmm. And they're now all part of Redwood Valley. So I decided, well, I'll do what my dad wanted me to do. Dad wanted me to be an accountant. I'll do that. I'm good at math. So I'll be an accountant. So I transferred to the main campus to go to university here. And while here at Carlson School of Management, I get a job at Time Life Books. I discover I'm pretty good selling books. And then I get a card in the mail from somebody that worked for a company at that time called IDS. It's now called Ameriprise Financial. So I'm a junior in college, got this little mailing thing, and I responded. Guy called on me, and I started investing money every month. Started putting $30 a month into stocks. Started putting $20 a month into a savings certificate. Mm-hmm. I started doing that as a 20-year-old kid. And then the guy knew I was on the phones, and he discovered that I was like a star, and he started to recruit me. He says, maybe you should work here at IDS, and I said, well, I'd be interested in that. And then while he was doing that, he said, but I really could use your help. You could help me start a company. And so Bob Day, Bill Von Stocken, and myself. So Minneapolis Magazine at that time, or Minneapolis St. Paul Magazine, at that time it was called Minneapolis Magazine, was having trouble financially, And I was selling for Time Life books. I understood the economics of this, and I kind of got it, economically. And so he said, you know how to sell this stuff on the phone. You know the economics. Can you help me put the deal together? I won't tell you the deal I put together. I could. If it's interesting, I would tell you the deal.
Go for it.
But at the time, here was the deal. I'm a junior in college, and I go to this guy. He's the publisher of the magazine, and the subscription at that time cost $5 for, once a month you'd get the magazine. And I thought, well, so I go to the guy and I said, we will sell your magazine for you and we will pay you, but I want to own the circulation. I want to own the circulation so that anybody that subscribes, we get the revenue for the subscription. Mm-hmm. And however that comes in. And so they would pay us. And then every subscriber, I will both provide you the name of the subscriber and $1. Mm-hmm. And at first he was disappointed that I was going to keep 4 of the dollars. I said, but right now I know that it costs you more than $5 to get a subscriber. Mm-hmm. So what I'm willing to do is give you subscribers and $1. And I know the more subscribers you get, the more people will actually pay to advertise in your magazine. Mm-hmm. So they pay for subscribers. Yeah, I'll get you subscribers and dollars that you currently don't have.
There you go.
And so he said yes. So we started a business. And then we were stupid because we mismanaged the money, and he figured out another way to work around us because there was this process that was all involved. But that was a great lesson, and that was my first business. And then I started at IDS. I was 21 years old. I hadn't finished my college degree, so I didn't quite finish my accounting degree. Mm-hmm. In fact, I never did, Mason Confessions. I never finished my accounting degree. I did finish my college degree. Okay. At age 57, I completed my degree in business management, now fully qualified for some of the things I used to do.
There you go. That's a good way to put it right there.
Yeah.
Well, what was your career like at IDS when you were working there?
It was wonderful. I had great mentors and teachers, and I learned a lot about human beings and human behavior. And a lot of my own philosophies, things that I had learned as a kid, started to come true. And I was able to apply those philosophies in life and later write books about them. And it was really good. So my early years, I looked at it as the opportunity to make money making a difference. Mm-hmm. Because it was really critical to me that my life would be a difference-making life, not just a money-making life. Mm-hmm. But here I saw an opportunity where I could do both. I could actually make money and make a difference. And when I moved into field leadership, which happened really rapidly, I started fast. In our company, I was really one of the top people and as a first-year person, and they moved me into leadership so I could train people. And so I became a district manager when I was 23 years old. And everybody in my district was older than me. But I looked at it as we can make money making a difference. And so I started to recruit people and I identified them in this way in my mind. I need people, Mason, who have the heart of a social worker and the mind of a capitalist.
There you go.
And if you're that person, then I'd like you to consider coming to work with me where you can make money making a difference. Mm-hmm. Doing something that is a growth industry, and we're a growth company, and I'm a growth guy. Mm-hmm. And that's how I would recruit. That led to some success as in leadership. We became the most productive district in the company of the 600 districts. And that led to me becoming a division manager and blah, blah, blah. Eventually, I ran the distribution business, the advisor business for what's now called Ameriprise Financial here in Minnesota, where we are sitting right now.
Yeah. And your rise in the quote-unquote corporate ladder, what do you think, what skills or values attributed to that rise that you had? Because you got all the way up were you the senior advisor to the CEO of American Express at
Yes.
one would say at the
yes.
peak, I guess, of the corporate ladder?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mason. And just real quickly, IDS was here in Minnesota, and American Express in the early 80s, 1980s, was looking at potentially buying it. So they hired McKinsey and Company, which is a famous consulting firm, and one of their consultants, Harvey Golub, to look at the wisdom of buying this company in Minnesota. And so they were putting together a supermarket of financial services companies. So American Express once had Shearson Lehman, and then Shearson broke up, and you had Shearson, you had Lehman, they had Fireman's Fund, all those, and they looked at IDS. Well, Harvey liked it. And at that time, it became the biggest deal ever in financial services. IDS was acquired by American Express for $750 million early in 1983. Well, in 1982, or 1984, excuse me, in 1982 and 1983, they were doing due diligence, and I was one of the 8 people in the field that was involved in them kicking the tires. So I got to know the who's who of American Express, Lou Gerstner and Sandy Weil and Jim Robinson and Aldo Popone. I mean, it was unbelievable. But I didn't know they were all those heroes until later. I was just this naive, undereducated guy who happened to be a high performer. And so what happened is I was able to demonstrate that I could help large numbers of advisors become successful at helping growing numbers of clients. The result of that is I got promoted beyond my education. But then the company hired for me coaches. Fred Keel was my executive coach. He was the principal of KRW, and they did he was considered the grandfather of executive coaching, passed away a few years ago. But previous to that, he and I wrote a couple books together, Moral Intelligence and Moral Intelligence 2.0. Then they hired Ro Moriarty. Ro Moriarty was the head of the executive management program at Harvard University. They said, we've got this undereducated kid here for you. I'm an adult now, I'm 36, but not that old, but I didn't have a college degree. So he became my academic mentor. And Fred Keel was my leadership mentor. But what Fred and I discovered about each other is I did what he was teaching other executives to do, which is learn how to get the best out of people by being nicer rather than beaten. You've heard the saying, beatings will continue till morale improves.
Right. Yeah.
I figured out, what if we skipped the beatings, just improve the morale?
There you go.
And that worked. Remarkable.
How did you improve morale? What was your most effective tactic in improving morale?
I basically, what I would do is I'd find out what you cared about. I'd find out what you wanted. And what I would do, and I use this acronym, it was taught to me by Roy Geer. And Roy Geer was one of my mentors who I was blessed. I'm 47. He was 47. I was 22 when I met him. And basically I built my entire career on helping other people get what they want. So the foundation for growing a business is retention. Keep your clients, keep your valuable employees.
Yeah, the key word there, valuable employees.
Yeah, you don't want adverse retention. You can get adverse retention by keeping people who do the bare minimum. That's the minimum max theory. And a lot of people find out the minimum to keep the job. But what's the minimum to win the keep your job contest? That's the maximum they will do.
Right.
Most people aren't like that. Most people actually have good hearts, good heads. They really like to do well at what they do. So I look at bringing in that and bringing in the right person, but then focusing. So if you came to work for me, we had one of our interns, by the way, just started with us, who was an intern with us, interned also with the Hans Group, just finished his degree at Ohio University In high school, he was a high school All-American quarterback from Ohio.
Wow.
Played a little bit in college, but decided to focus, like yourself, on other things. You could have played sports. And he just recently graduated from Ohio University and just recently started with us. And basically, I say, what do you want for yourself? And here's what I believe. His name's Kevin. Say, Kevin, if I can help you get what you want for yourself and you're really good at it, my guess is you'll probably stay with me. I've learned I lose people professionally in my career for one of two reasons. I either help them get to where they want to go or I don't. I will help anybody go wherever they want. They don't have to work for me the rest of their life. I just want people to be successful, to be happy, to be fulfilled. And if going on helps you with that, go on. Go for it. So I'm not here to employ the world. I'm here to help the world be employable.
Yeah, it's a selfless endeavor, it seems like.
Yes.
And you're trying not to have people be helped so they can help you, sort of deal. It seems like you prioritize them getting what they want, which indirectly benefits yourself and the business that you work in and that you lead, and therefore you get what you want too, whatever that happens to be.
Well, and this is enlightened capitalism. This is Adam Smith. Wealth of Nations, 1776. Two big things happened that year.
Yes,
the country was born, and Wealth of Nations was published, and the death of the business of you got to take from others, mercantilism, was over. And all of a sudden they realized we can create wealth. It's in my interest to act in your interest. And the metaphor he used was the butcher. And the butcher figured out that if I never cheat the customer, if I give them the best cut of meat, and if I make a mistake, give them a little more, not a little less, never err on the side of me. If I'm making a mistake, err on the side of the customer. Pretty soon, everybody wanted to do business with that butcher. So he goes to the farmer and he says, that your best cuts, I need those. And the farmer says, well, you can have those, but I need better grain. So he goes and he starts doing whatever he has to do from the supplier to get the better grains. Everybody's now getting better. All those businesses are getting better. Rising tide lifts all boats. And I'm involved in different businesses and they help one another. Like locally, I'm one of the owners of the Chanhassen Dinner Theater and an owner here at the Think to Perform. And one helps the other. It's a good perspective to have, because I think maybe one of the negative connotations that capitalism gets is it's a very individual-based endeavor, in the sense that people just focused on increasing profits to the maximum degree and not caring what the other consequences come from that. And there are some companies maybe that do that more than others, but it seems like the ones you're involved in were not those sort of companies. Well, I mean, I will say this. There are companies that do that, and there are people that most people couldn't tell you what socialism really is or communism really is. They can tell you they hate it or they like it, but they don't know what it is. And that's true about capitalism. And I'm talking about Adam Smith economics. I'm talking about what he would refer to in his era as enlightened capitalism. And when Fred Keel and I wrote the books Moral Intelligence and Moral Intelligence 2.2, these were books about sustainability. This was not about religion or, this was about organizational sustainability. And what we learned is that organizations that are built to last, you got guys like Jim Collins writing books like that and From Good to Great, those organizations have really strong moral underpinnings. And so when we wrote Moral Intelligence, we did 10 years of research from mid-'90s to the mid-2005, that first decade. We had a guy named Orlo Otteson who gathered a lot of the research. We had a lot of our own experiences, and we learned a heck of a lot. Neuroscience was really starting to make breakthroughs at the time, and we really could see what could happen. And what we came up with, and there's more principles than this, but principles are things that apply to everyone. at all times. It's like gravity. You don't have to believe in gravity for it to work.
Right.
Like we know there are people that think the earth is flat. They still won't fall off.
Right. Exactly.
So you don't have to believe it for it to be true. So true north is where it is, even if I don't know where it is. So that's the deal.
Right.
And so that's the concept of principles. So these are human principles. Whether you value them or not, that's your deal. But they are human principles, and they apply to you even if you don't care about them. And here they are. 2 principles of the head: integrity and responsibility. 2 principles of the heart: compassion and forgiveness. The business outcomes of the behavioral implementation of those principles. So what integrity in action produces trust. Responsibility in action inspires people. Compassion in action produces attraction and retention of the best and the brightest. And forgiveness produces innovation. You know the product Formula 409, have you ever heard of it? I think they still sell it. It's in the stores. It's a cleaning product.
If I saw it, I might recognize it.
Yeah, it's got it comes in a little squirt bottle now.
Okay.
It's called Formula 409. It's got it named from 408 mistakes.
Is that why they call it?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And in my career, American Express, I made the big multi-million-dollar mistake in one of our businesses in England. I don't even care to comment on how much it probably cost us, but it was a great, but I learned a lot. And from what I learned, we made hundreds of millions of dollars. So tuition can be expensive, and some things are terminal, but not unforgivable. Mistakes of integrity in certain, and hopefully most businesses are terminal. Don't steal, don't cheat, don't do any of that. The Enron guys found that when their values, the corporate values were fine. Respect, integrity, communications, excellence. Anything wrong with any of those?
Not that I can tell.
No, those sounded great. Problem they had was the behavior didn't match. Not of the rank and file. Rank and file thought those make sense. We're doing it. So the vast majority of those employees bought into values-based decision-making. I'm going to align my behaviors with that. I'm going to treat my colleagues and our customers with respect. We're going to behave with integrity. We're going to do that. And we're going to communicate, be open with each other, and we're going to pursue excellence. That's what we're going to do. Well, these guys, it came obvious that when someone entered a $100 million loan as revenue, and I don't know how far you've gone so far in your business classes, but when you borrow money or make money, the 100 million is still 100 million, and it spends the same way. But one of them you owe back.
Right. With some interest that comes with it, too.
Yeah, and the other one was yours. And so that kind of confused everybody. And so Enron crashed. One of my books was in a college class. Accidentally, I found that out by taking the course. And Enron was one of the subjects that came up. That's why I happen to remember their corporate values. I don't know every company's corporate values.
Was the Enron crash, that wasn't in the '07?
No.
That was the early 2000s one? Okay. That was one question I was going to have for you.
That was before Moral Intelligence came out. See, Enron, Global Crossing, Tyco, all those companies, those disastrous moral collapses, all led to the publishing of Moral Intelligence.
There you go. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction right there. Well, I was wondering, as I was coming up with questions for you, in dealing in the financial world, and you're advising people, or you had people underneath you advising customers on how to put their finances in a safe spot, how would you navigate economic downturns when they would occur? Because throughout your career, you had those bear markets that would come every now and again.
Yeah, well, and then you've got the Black Swan book out there. I mean, That's an interesting concept because swans are white.
Right.
But every now and then you got a black swan, or same thing in any nature. So the markets are uncertain. There's a concept for those that, and by the way, for those of you that, if you're under 20 and make some money, you can do what I did at age 20, which is start investing.
Right. Roth IRAs. Can't say it enough.
Yeah. And so, and I would say the sooner the better. We talk about compounding of money and compounding of personal growth. I would encourage you to listen to Mason's podcast. I'm serious about this. He's laughing at me right now, but I'm serious. This is a personal growth opportunity. You can compound your personal growth. Don't be late for your life. And what you're talking about here are things that allow for people to grow. Mm-hmm. And so that's what they need. And we all need that. I need that. Mm-hmm. There's no end to better. So I'm not lecturing anybody. I'm talking to myself here, Doug. I am not done. I'm 73 and getting better. Mm-hmm. Why? Because I don't want to quit making a difference. I just do it differently. That's all. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is my purpose hasn't changed. And other than adding the words as human beings, my purpose has been the same since Richard Leiter brought me through it right around the 1979, 1980. And I wrote down with his help, my purpose is to help myself and others achieve our highest and greatest potential. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I wasn't harnessed by my reality, that I wasn't yet accepting that I'm a human animal. I'm a being, and it has an ending and a beginning. And I used to think I could outthink my humanity. I can't. I'm human. The Mount Rushmore of gifts, I can't shake them. When I started my career in financial services, some of the people in the industry, and I could name their names but won't, they told me this: Doug, you have to learn to leave your emotions at home. And for years, I felt like I was defective because I never one day left my emotions at home. Mm-hmm. Not one day. And I thought I must be defective. And it turns out no one can leave their emotions at home. I got defective information. Mm-hmm. And the second thing is sometimes you have to do the wrong thing. And I thought, no, I don't. And I didn't have to do the wrong thing. Now, in my life, have I ever done the wrong thing? Yes, but not because I had to. Doing the wrong thing is a choice. Mm-hmm. Understanding that is a choice.
Right. That's one thing from what I'm taking from you in this is I've heard Warren Buffett talk about this too with like...
I did get to meet him once, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're not buddies, but I did get to meet him, and that's my claim to fame, but...
That's a cool little feather in the cap right there.
He sat right next to me in the chair to my right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
But he had an idea when it comes to like markets going down or when you have recessions and how people get upset. And he's like, no, you want to buy the red. Because eventually it's going to come back up.
Yeah. He had a cute little saying, and I'll paraphrase because this won't be exact, but it's pretty close. He said the markets are the world's way of transferring wealth from the irrational to the rational.
Yeah. And he said, I think another philosophy he had, or I think sound financial advisors have, is being patient too.
Yeah. Well, and what I talk back to your question on how do you get ready for it, I teach what I call the smart money philosophy. Mm-hmm. And the smart money philosophy basically says, we don't know what's going to happen. The truth is uncertainty. And here's what I advise every listener. This is my advice to every listener. If you yourself don't become an advisor, and if you choose to have an advisor, I first of all encourage you to have one. But you want to have an advisor that is in it for you. Mm-hmm. You know, that's the real key. And so when I look at that and the one who's in it for you should be open to talking to you about the truth. And the truth is uncertainty. So I'm going to tell you for sure, Mason, I don't know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. I'm not an expert at predicting the future. I'm an expert at preparing for uncertainty.
There you go.
So if you've got someone who knows what's going to happen, introduce them to me. I'd love to learn from them.
Right.
I'm not that guy. I once got a call from the Associated Press. They said, "Is this Doug Lennick?" I said, "Yes, it is." I was driving to Green Bay to do an event, and I'm driving my car because I prefer driving and flying if I can. And it was somebody from the Associated Press said, "This is so-and-so." And I said, "Yeah, it's nice to meet you." And he said, "Are you the guy that doesn't know what's going to happen?" I said, "I'm your guy." I don't know. Because the deal is what you want to do as an investor is be ready every day for the rest of your life, which you can start anytime you want. You can get ready now for the certainty of uncertainty. Now, some people can't afford to retire, so they want to be financially independent. Financial independence, when I was really young, and it's still true, is the point in time when the big independence that people are theoretically seeking is a point in time when they have enough capital and assets working for them that work itself is optional and retirement is affordable. But another version of financial independence is I am independent from the need for anybody to support me. I am independent. I am on my own. I don't need assistance. I don't need. Now, some people absolutely need it, but financial independence means I don't need it. And this is not, and the only reason I don't need it is because I can afford myself. Now, I might have wealth, and that allows me to not have to work at all. Or I might go to work. But when I was age 21, I decided I'm going to be financially independent. Now, at that time, if you made a 5-figure annual income, you could quit working. I mean, you could, you're not high on the hog, but I thought I don't want to make 10 grand a year. I want to make 15. And at that time, this is now 1973. 1974, I turned 22. I'm a new advisor, and I developed my own plan. And I said, nothing will stop me. If I continue my investment pattern, I will accumulate, and I would hit the number, I think, somewhere around age 40, I would have hit $250,000. But it got, of course, life changed.
Right.
It changed and things happened a lot differently. But I said, the only thing that can stop me, because I'm going to work. No one can stop me from working. People can fire me. But that's why I always said, if I want a guaranteed job, which I do, I'm going to go ahead and work for myself. If I want a guaranteed income, which I don't, I would come and work for somebody else.
There you go.
And I don't have a guaranteed income. Now, what I do have is a guaranteed job. I work here. I work for me. And my income fluctuates, and it always has. I did, in my executive era at American Express, of course, have a guaranteed income, but that entrepreneur in me was never gone. When I started at IDS, when I started my little company, Minneapolis Circulation, I did that with just plain old, I'm doing it, and we're going to make it work. And I, believe in the concept that this professor from Wharton talks about in her book. What's the name of the book? Learning to Change, or How to Change is the book. I'm missing her name right now, and I forgive me for that. But she says obstacles are not, for those who get somewhere, obstacles aren't in the way. They're on the way. And I've had lots of obstacles. I never thought any of these things would happen. But what I did do is prepared for anything that could happen. So when it comes to money, here's the deal. I'm going to be alive for a period of time, and then I'm going to die for an indefinite period of time.
Right.
And both of those are financial events while I'm alive. So I'm going to get prepared financially for both of those. So what I said is I want someone to know, and I wasn't married at the time, but I want someone to know that Doug Lennick decided he was going to be financially independent. And he knew that if he had $250,000, he could afford to quit working, but he knew he wouldn't quit working because he wasn't working to not work. He was working because he liked to work. That's what I learned from Grandma and Grandpa and Mom and Dad. You work to work, not to not work.
Right. The joy of work.
The joy of work. But I do want the independence. I don't want to have to work because I need the money. And so I want to be financially independent. And so I bought $250,000 of insurance. Now I buy $250,000 of insurance on all my grandkids. And I did the same thing for my kids. I should have got more now probably, but I did it for me. And then I did it for my kids, and then and then when they turn 18, I give it to them.
That's a very nice gift.
It is a nice gift. And people will say, well, that's stupid. No, it's not. It's a values-based decision. You might want to do it differently. But what I found is, for me, knowing that nothing could stop me, because I not only bought that life insurance policy, I bought disability income to ensure my capacity to continue to invest even if I couldn't work. And the only thing that would prevent me from working is I couldn't work. Not you fired me. You can fire me, but you can't stop me from working.
Right.
So I never worried about being fired, ever. And in fact, I remember one of my mentors at American Express, he even told me, which I already bought into this, but a great guy. He says, Doug, you will find that your courage at the executive table will go up when you don't need the job.
That's true. That's true.
And I will also say this about just how people do things in general is people stand on a subject largely based on where they sit. So whatever place I'm seated at in life will influence my stance on a lot of positions. Give that thought. But back to financial independence, I'm either healthy and therefore working and I, by the way, am one of those guys who has already pro-tired. Mitch Anthony, an author out of Rochester, New York, or Rochester, Minnesota, coined that term, pro-tirement, years ago. I pro-tired. I'm not retiring. I will not retire. You will know the day I quit working is the day that you read about me in the obituaries. Hey,
Right.
Doug quit. How do you know he died? I read it. Because up till then, I got no reason to not contribute. And what happens is, with excess money, I can live my legacy. I don't have to die and leave it. A lot of people are leaving legacies. Well, that's wonderful. Well, how about living it? How about taking your values and going ahead and living them? And I have this concept, and if you can help me blow it out through the world, be great. I really believe that a lot of the global problems could be solved by having, in essence, the matching of resources with non-resources to people who have similar values. So some people care about stuff, but they don't have the resources. Some people have the resources and care about the same stuff. They can help those people out. You've done that in your own life. Some people do it in their churches or their synagogues or their places of worship. Some people don't worship at all, and they do it just because they realize I'm a member of humanity and I'm supposed to do something for somebody other than me. Right. And it's not a religious thing at all. It's just a human thing. But do that, and that's the deal. I think we can solve a lot of the world's problems.
I think so, too. I think there's definitely some room in that. I also had an idea of where you could get world peace, perhaps, is that you get all the world leaders, bring them out into space, have them look back on the Earth, and maybe they get a different perspective from that viewpoint. So
I love that.
We'll see. At the rate we're going with space travel, that might be attainable in the near future.
Yep.
But time will tell.
And then, by the way, while we're alive and we're healthy and we're not sick or hurt and we're just investing, the markets are going to go up and down.
Yeah.
So you never want to be all in or all out, ever.
Yeah. It's always going
to... You're always in, because the idea of being prepared for the truth, which is uncertainty, the smart money philosophy says this, and I'll say this to you, Mason, if you follow my advice, which will be comprehensive in nature, and it will prepare you for the truth, which is uncertainty, so it's going to prepare you for what we don't know.
Right.
So then whenever you need money, because something happens that we didn't think would happen at that time, there will be a smart place to get it.
Yeah.
Would that help you feel okay about handling your money?
Absolutely.
That's what we do.
There you go.
So the idea then is you have equities and you have cash, you have fixed income investments, you balance yourself out. Now, so not everybody has the resources for this. I get that. But, when I've gone to high schools, I was out in, I think it was Burnsville High School a number of years ago, and I asked out of curiosity, how many of you in this room could save $50 a month? Guess how many percentage-wise? I'm in Burnsville, nice area. And maybe it wasn't Burnsville. It was Apple Valley. Sorry, take it back. So I'm in Apple Valley. Mm-hmm. So I'm talking to juniors and seniors. What do you think?
That they could save money?
$50 a month. I just said, I didn't even ask them, could you save anything? I just said, how many, if you wanted to, could save $50 a month?
I feel like 100% I would.
Pretty close. Yeah. I said, now, interestingly enough, most of your parents don't save that much. Mm-hmm. And my encouragement to you is go ahead and start now. And here's the deal. You can do the math. At $50 a month, reasonable rate of return, you will be a millionaire. Mm-hmm. The only thing that can stop you is your behavior.
Yep. Just need to have patience to go with it, too.
Well, yeah, you have to do it every month, and you have to let yourself get older, which you will, by the way, even if you try to stop.
Right,
So
exactly.
you can buy all the deny your hair is going to grow out of your head. Like I got taller. As you can see, I'm growing through my hair.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good perspective to
Yeah,
have.
that's a good perspective.
When it comes to finances too, I think a lot of things that come with that as well, and money and just like people's personal incomes and investments and whatnot. A lot of people will have fear and greed arise when dealing with that. And I'm assuming in your career, you probably saw that both in your clients,
Yes,
or even maybe in your colleagues,
or even in myself,
or yourself.
Yeah,
and
a lot of the stuff I've worked on, I deal with as a human myself. And interestingly, a guy that I've become friends with over the years, we don't get to spend much time, but he's a college professor at Santa Clara University. His name's Hersh Shefrin. And he wrote the book Beyond Greed and Fear. So it's interesting that you mentioned that title.
Look at that.
So yeah, but the idea there is emotions drive investor behavior. Richard Peterson wrote the book Inside the Investor's Brain. He's at Stanford University as well. We'd mentioned Stanford earlier. And the role that the mind plays to trick the investor into performing less well with their investments than they could is all driven by emotions. And so when I'm feeling greedy is an emotion. How are you feeling greedy? I mean, people don't want to say that. It's not an intellectual thing, being greedy, right? I mean, would you intellectually say, I've given it some thought?
Yeah. I guess it depends.
You could decide to be greedy.
Yeah.
But it's not generally, it's on that edge where one gets struggling between verbs, nouns, and all that.
Right.
But it's like purpose. Purpose can be a verb, little p's. What's my purpose every day? What's the verb? What do I put into action? I've had some of this water where I've got these little bottles of water. And one of the things that I know you've heard me say, Mason, in the past, but I use water to remind me of behaving in alignment with my values. Mm-hmm. So when I'm drinking water, so I'll do a little demo. You can say something if you want. I'm going to drink a little bit.
I can commentate it as he opens up his little water and takes a sip from it, in the process of watching his analogy unfold in real time. And it's about halfway gone in the tiny water bottle.
And here's where we're at. Here's what happened in the time that Mason shared with you the narrative. This is what went through my head. Earlier I shared with you, I think I did, and if I didn't, I will now. My values are family, happiness, wisdom, integrity, service, and health. And I want to put them into my daily life. I want to live those values. That's what living my legacy is. My legacy is living my values. Love your family. Be happy. Seek wisdom. Behave with integrity. Do something of service for somebody else today. Thank you. and make healthy choices. And then I set the water bottle down and I look across the desk at Mason and I smile and I say to myself and to Mason and to all of you, I made one just now.
There you go.
And that's it. And so the idea is, now there are behavioral things that I also do that are more than just sitting here and loving my family. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have close relationships with each of my children and each of their spouses. All three of my adult children are married. All three of them have spouses. All three of them have one child, and one of my children will have her second and last child this October. And that will be the end of our grandchildren. There are 4. And I do things with each of them. So I actively spend time with them, but when I'm not with them, I can still love them, but I have to keep them in mind. I have to remember what I'm doing here. Mm-hmm. So love your family. Be happy, because I am happy. When I think about my family, like when I take a shower in the morning, and I do love your family, because water is the trigger for me. So today I've done values reflections probably 24 times, certainly well over a dozen, because I've taken a shower, I've washed my hands, I've drank several bottles of water. Every time. It's just the way the brain works is practice makes permanent. So every time I do this, watch what I'm doing. You can comment again.
He's drinking his water one more time. Taking a nice long gulp of water. I might have to do the same thing while you're doing it here, too. I'll let him finish, though.
Yeah, and I'm done. And I did it again. Love your family. Be happy. I'm happy, and seek wisdom. That's one of the reasons I wanted to be on I begged Mason to be on this podcast. And it's one of the reasons I did, is I knew it would be wise to do it. And wisdom, if you ever do our values exercise, you'll notice there's not a card in there, but there are write-ins. You can write them in. And wisdom is a write-in card. I believe in wisdom because wisdom sorts out urgency and patience, but wisdom also sorts out good and evil. Mm-hmm. And I believe it's wise to be good versus evil. I believe in things such as that. I believe it's wise to be knowledgeable, but knowledge in and of itself isn't good enough for me, because I can be knowledgeable at all the wrong things. I can be very good at using instruments for destruction that were not meant for destruction.
Right. Or like evading the IRS or something.
Like something like that. By the way, I just had to pay us up to the IRS a little extra in for not having paid in enough last year, which happens. But I don't, that's part of what we do is I'm one of those Minnesotans who stayed here and still pays ridiculously high income taxes in the state. But we have a great state.
We do have a great state.
My grandkids drive on these roads, go to these schools. And
get the health care and Mayo Clinic.
Yeah, get all that stuff. And so I could do what some do, which is spend more than half the year in Florida, for example, is the one state is a state, not the only one. Yeah. That's one.
I know. I would love for someday for Americans and the government itself to have taxes be viewed as not a burden to be paid, but an investment into America that you will reap the benefits in later on.
Yeah.
I feel like if you could change your perspective on taxes into seeing it as not an expense, but an investment, people would probably not be as, they wouldn't try as hard to evade paying taxes, but you got to fix some things first before that's the case.
I love how you said that, truthfully. And the thing about it, back to the bucket of just general philosophy, accept whatever is as is. So we spend too much time debating the truth. Let's just identify it and say, this is, and then let's go from here and make what is better.
Right.
Because humanity's appetite for growth is insatiable. I mean, it's really true. Human nature, we have the nature to see problem and opportunity in our circumstance. That's why humanity marches on. But we are an intelligent being, the human being, but we don't own intelligence. Intelligence existed before humans.
Right. Plants evolved and animals evolved too.
Yes, yeah, and when humans think, well, no, we're the only animal that has a brain. No. I mean the only animal that has cognition and reasoning capability. Well, the reality is when Homo sapiens appeared on Earth, fire had already been harnessed by, I think, the Neanderthals. Is that who it was? Who were the guys before us?
It could have been. There was a variety, but I think.
But fire was part of life. It's just like kids born today. They will never know there weren't cell phones. They'll have to read about it.
Right. That's crazy, I bet.
Yeah. When I was born, I didn't have a TV till I was 6. We did have a telephone. My grandmother's phone number, entire number was 393. Total number.
That's kind of like, for me, there's a life like in America before 9/11, America after 9/11, but I only know the America after 9/11.
Right, and there was something before then. And most people think history started with them.
Right.
And that's how it's natural to think the world started when I started. It actually started earlier.
Quite early. A couple billion years before.
Yeah. And if we can start putting ourselves in perspective and recognize our place. And I say this sometimes, because we're at the top of the food chain, we sometimes fail to remember we're in it.
Right.
And when we fail to remember we're in it, we dehumanize us. The human in us is who we are. That's the animal. Dehumanizing us takes us out of our being. And right now, and this is, you probably won't have realized this is happening, but most people who send emails now, emails in the past, and I'm going to guess as recently as a few years ago, I don't know, maybe even as recently as 5 years ago, always had phone numbers on the bottom. You get lots of emails now, there are no phone numbers. And the reason there are no phone numbers is they don't want you to call. And if you accidentally figure out how to call them, you're going to get a phone answering capability that will ask you questions, and then you're going to try to interact with it, and it's going to send you around and around and around. It's designed. It's a design to make it frustrating for you to talk to a person. Dehumanizing people is not going to be to the human's advantage. It just doesn't make sense if you think about it. Why would I want to dehumanize you or me? I want our relationship to be a human relationship. But if I communicate with you and dehumanize myself by saying there's no way to contact me, May said, I'm a real person, I'm not a robot. How do I know? I just told you I'm not a robot. Don't contact me. Or if you want to, give it a try.
Right. It is interesting, especially when you see the rise of artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And how people my age are going to start thinking about how is that going to affect the workforce that we're about to enter when you're in college right now, or if you're not in college, maybe you're in trade school or high school.
Every new advancement eliminates a lot of jobs from the old world. So we don't, the buggy manufacturers, they still make them, but they're just not as many because the number of buggies in the world are few. Right. I mean, you see them on the, the carts with the kings, they'll ride the buggies. And
some
such.
Tourist spots might have them.
Yeah, and you see them, in New York, they have the things on New York City, they have the little buggies and horses.
Right. And
they have the whips and the stuff, but that's a shrinking industry. And so elevator operators, conductors on trains, like one of the, I don't know if, I'm sure there's more than this, but the only elevator operator that I personally interact with in the Twin Cities is when I get into the elevator at Target Center.
At Target Field, they got the same thing going on, too.
Yeah, at the fields.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the only place. Otherwise, you go in and press your own button.
Yeah.
I mean, it's remarkable. In New York, there's still a number of, not very many, but there are a number of places where they have an elevator operator, just a few, very high-end, where you get on and you shouldn't have to push your own button. Mm-hmm. And they will say, what floor, Mr. Birnbaum, and
And they do their job. It's interesting, though, because people are worried about how AI is going to replace a lot of jobs, too.
Well, it will.
And people are...
But not the people.
Right.
The people have to be employable. So the idea, what you're helping people be is not employed, but employable. You're not guaranteeing them jobs. You're just saying, hey, if you continue to change and learn and remain evergreen, at least we have one example of a guy who's 73 who says you can keep learning even at 73.
Right.
So those of you who are older than me, if you're listening, just send Mason a note saying I'm 80 and I'm still learning.
There you go.
And then he'll know that it can go longer. Mm-hmm. Those of you who are younger, just trust Mason that I'm really here and I'm a real human.
And I think that's going to be a big determinant on those that are going to succeed in this changing job landscape that we have coming up, is the ability to change, or the want to change, and the ability to not be afraid of the unknown as well, or at least to be able to persevere through the fear of the unknown.
Oh, yeah. It takes courage. Mm-hmm. But absent fear, there's no courage.
Right. You need both.
You need
one to have the other.
You do. Courageous people, fearless people aren't courageous, but courageous people have fear.
Yeah.
So that's a wonderful thing.
And it's just going to be able to, how do you deal with that fear in a positive manner?
Well, and what you're doing, and I want to thank you for doing this for everybody, myself included. So I got a lot out of this myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I'm learning from you, and I fully expected I would.
Yeah, and that's what I love about this Think to Perform company that you created and started, in the internship or the mentorship program that I was a part of too, is the lessons that you can learn from other people.
You should consider an internship here. You shouldn't stop with a mentorship.
I certainly wouldn't be opposed to that.
Yeah,
we could certainly talk once the mics are turned off about that too. But that's one thing I wanted people to know about this, is the Think to Perform, the values exercise, which I will include a link in the description of this podcast on how to do that, because I think it's very beneficial for people to get their values aligned. I remember doing that when I was like 17 years old, and that was a very great, I'm glad I did something like that. Yeah. Because it's a good roadmap to keep you going.
And you revisit that from time to time. There may be some changes on the margin.
Right.
But I haven't changed a heck of a lot over the years. Mm-hmm. I used to have, when I had 5, but people say, well, wait, the game takes you down to 5, the exercise. And, but I used to have 5, but my first one was family happiness. Mm-hmm. And I do want my family to all be happy, but I discovered as my family grew in size, there was somebody unhappy quite a lot.
Right. It's almost unattainable.
Yeah. So I value my happiness, and I do hope that my family's happy. I value family and I value happiness, so I split them apart.
Yeah.
But the importance is to be serious with yourself. Mm-hmm. Because what you want to be able to do is call on your values in difficult moments to help you make a decision, so that you aren't like I have been, morally intelligent and morally incompetent in the same moment, so that you rise above that and you do the right thing in the presence of competing and difficult to deal with emotions.
Mm-hmm. And you sometimes have to do the wrong thing to appreciate doing the right thing. Because if you did the right thing all the time, you wouldn't know the joys of doing the right thing.
Exactly.
That's
well, and the good news is, because you're human, you can't escape. Mm-hmm. You will make mistakes.
Absolutely.
You will be, I don't know if it's ever happened yet, but have you ever, out of anger, either said or done something you regretted?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's an example.
Yeah, for sure.
You'll do it again.
That's the eclipse moment we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Well, I remember when my dad, my mom had already died. My mom died as a result of a car accident. My dad and mom were on their way to church from Clements, Minnesota, to Redwood Falls, Minnesota, and were in an accident. My mom died as a result of that. She died later. My dad survived, but he would get into this whole stuff as we talk about. How did you say it? What did you just say? You said
You got to have the bad to appreciate the good.
yeah. He would say that too, but the bad, and you're always learning. He would say, and yet I'm learning. And he was driving the car, which was horrendously bad, that resulted in my mother's death. Mm-hmm. And how he carried that, but he said to me some years later, I was asking him about emotions, and then he thought it was kind of a little silly that I was asking him about emotions, but and it relates to what we were saying. I said, during the course of a day, what kind of emotions do you experience? And he said, I don't know what you mean. I said, how do you feel during the day? What kind of emotions? He said, I really don't know what you mean. I said, well, do you feel like happy or sad or glad or, upset or
anything?
Yeah, any of that. And he goes, are you okay, Doug? I said, yeah. But it's a serious question. And he said, I feel all of those things. And I said, that's what I thought. And one of the things behind my desk is something that is written on my dad's gravestone, and this is a representation of it. It's actually a print from a Goya print, Ono Prendo, which means, and yet I'm still learning. That's on my dad's gravestone. So he was telling me, and I am, and I'm, thank you, Dad. He said, I'm still learning, and I'm still learning that I can't get rid of all these emotions. Mm-hmm. So he felt sad just like anybody else would when his wife died.
Yeah.
So the sadness doesn't go away because you got old. Mm-hmm. In fact, or whatever it is. I heard someone once say, which I really liked it. They said, grief is what you feel when love and loss intersect.
It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, it's how you feel when someone you love is lost.
Yeah.
You feel grief.
And you wouldn't feel, out of that, you wouldn't be able to feel grief if you didn't have that love to begin with.
Exactly right.
And that's kind of another philosophy that I have too, is you're going to appreciate something more once you're deprived of it for a certain amount of time. And the analogy I always bring up when I'm talking about that is people don't really appreciate air, but if you get held underwater against your will for 30 seconds and you come up and you're gasping for air, you're going to appreciate air because you were deprived of it for 30 seconds. Well, if you're used to losing, or if you're in a business that's been unsuccessful for 10 years in a row, but then you finally start becoming successful in whatever business venture it is, that success is going to feel that much sweeter because you were facing those adverse moments before and failure before.
Well, and we mentioned purpose in our conversation. And as it relates to business, I say this, and this gets back to also what we talked about in capitalism. The purpose of business, in my opinion, is no more to make money than the purpose of life is to breathe. Mm-hmm. That said, if you quit breathing, which you metaphorically described could happen underwater there, you will die.
Yeah.
And businesses that don't make money ever, and we don't make money every year here, mm-hmm. but we're a closely held business and have different pressures on ourselves because of it than publicly held businesses mm-hmm. or businesses that are owned by venture capital firms. There, your pressures are much different.
Right.
But those of you that have something that you think the world could benefit from, if you can create and offer that to the world at a price greater than your cost, go for it. But entrepreneurs, remember this, it's the circus act. There are 3 things that you have to keep spinning on those plates. You got your little stick and the plates.
Yep.
Plate number 1 is, what is it that you're offering that's worth it? Mm-hmm. So that has to stay evergreen. That's why if all you make are buggy whips, your company's going to go from $1 billion in revenue to $1.
Right. very quickly.
Okay?
Yeah.
So you got to stay evergreen. That's why the railroad industry, they had to, those that figured out we were in transportation did better than those who thought they were in railroad. Okay, so it's a different thing. So that's plate one, is what is it? What is my value proposition? Why should anybody buy my plate? Plate number two is who are the people that are going to buy my plate, and I got to go get them. How do I get them to come to me? If I'm a retail store, how do I get them to come into my store? If I'm an online provider, how do I get them to visit my website? Whatever it is, what is my bridge to the market? And that plate has to keep spinning. And then the third plate, which is the delivery of that first plate in a way that meets or exceeds the expectations. So you always have to be, because that's where your revenue comes from. You don't get any money until you get this going.
Exactly.
The other plates you're spinning like, oh, we got to go find a customer, hope someone comes in. And when you get those going, you can then run a business, and you can use the smart money philosophy to prepare yourself for the ups and downs of the business. Because some businesses are wonderfully going up all the time, but that's not true of every business. It's certainly not true of many small businesses. It's not true of farms, for example. It's not true of many businesses that were victimized by the pandemic. There's a lot of businesses that are influenced by weather.
Right.
Here in Minnesota, how many businesses are you aware of that are weather influenced? If it snows,
well, I know
if it doesn't.
With my job as a server, if it's raining, it's not going to be as busy of a day if it's sunny out. So that's a weather dependent.
Now, where are you serving?
I'm a server at the Astor Cafe on St. Anthony, Maine area, near the Stone Arch Bridge part of town. And I've been working there since May, but I absolutely love it. It's been really fun. It's been really fun.
Yeah.
But that's an example of a weather-dependent job, one could argue, because if it starts downpouring, then there's not going to be as many customers because we have a pretty big patio. But if you have 5 servers on, but you only have 20 people inside instead of 150 that you would have if the patio's open, then you're going to have people go home. So
yeah. That's what happens.
But I'm still fortunate to be employed nonetheless.
Well, yeah. Well, if you need a server job, the Chanhassen Dinner Theater, we have the largest restaurant in Minnesota. We serve 1,000 meals a day.
Do you guys actually do that? Because you have it's in the actual theater setting.
But the dinner theater itself, I think in there it's only 565 seats.
Okay.
But we do 2 matinees a week. And then we have, Stevie Ray's Comedy Club downstairs. We have Brindisi's Pub. We have the Fireside Theater, which is theater-style seating, but they don't eat there, but people can eat before or after, and they'll do that in there. So we've diversified our revenue streams in the theaters, Chanhassen Dinner Theaters, but.
Yeah.
Go to the theater, come to Think to Perform, come to Mason's place, and come back to his podcast. Do that a lot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As I try to grow this venture of mine, I guess I have 2 more questions here before we wrap up.
Okay.
My first one being, from your experience professionally or just in life, who is, in your opinion, the greatest leader that you've come in contact with? Why are they the greatest leader, and what made them the greatest leader?
Who is the greatest leader?
You can take that however you want, whether that be conduct or results that they generated.
Well, what I would say is I'll even modify the question a little bit. The greatest hero or the greatest leader, that's an interesting, in my career, I can say one of the greatest leaders, and he just happens to be in my mind now for various reasons, is Ken Chenault. Mm-hmm. Ken Chenault was the CEO of American Express. And at the end of my career, I reported directly to him. I worked half-time. He allowed for me to start Think to Perform and continue to work. And so I did that. For a while, what I did was I wanted to start Think to Perform, and he was supportive of that. And I announced that I was going to leave the company in March of 2000. I said I will leave, or in March of 2000, 9/11, right?
Yep.
Happened in 2000?
2001.
2001.
Yep.
So it was in March of 2001 is when I announced I would leave 12 months later. So 9/11 happened in the middle of that time period. And Ken asked if I would stay another full year in order to support the new CEO. And Jim Cracchiolo's done a phenomenal job as the CEO of Ameriprise. At that time, it was American Express Financial Advisors. And Ken was just an extraordinary leader. And I saw, I was sitting in his office one day when the world came crashing down and companies had to make difficult decisions and some people lost their jobs. And I remember sitting in his office and reading emails from people who were displaced and how appreciative they were to work for him.
So they got replaced or fired or let go, and they're thanking him.
They're thanking him.
On their way out.
On their way out. And the thing is that in the 4 principles that I mentioned, the hallmark principle, the one that has the biggest gap between virtuoso executives and the also-rans is compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Compassion is actively caring about the well-being of others. Compassion is empathy in action.
Mm-hmm.
Empathy is both the hallmark of a con man and the hallmark of Mother Teresa. Empathy is simply the capacity to understand somebody else, understand their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Skillful politicians are empathetic, but not necessarily compassionate.
Mm-hmm.
They understand the electorate.
Doesn't mean they're going to lose sleep about it, though.
Well, it doesn't mean some of them want the vote, but being empathy, and empathy is so critical. It's an emotional competence that all of us want to develop, but we want to marry it to the moral principle, compassion. Mm-hmm. And when empathy is part of compassion, compassion is empathy in positive action for somebody else. I care about you. So like I might be empathetic and say, I feel for you. I really hope, Mason, that somebody does something. I mean, I feel your pain. I mean, seriously, I hope the government or somebody should do something for you.
Right.
Not me, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel for you. I do. Compassion is, I actually am going to help you. Mm-hmm. Oh, what? Yeah, it's that kind of empathy. And so Ken Chenault was a compassionate executive. People who worked for Ken loved Ken. And he was a great leader, just a phenomenal leader. And he still is. He's doing his work now, and a lot of what he does globally is focused on values-based leadership and supporting global initiative on values. I actually sent him a note. He hasn't responded. Maybe he'll listen to this, but if he responds back to me, I just sent him something recently saying, I think we should make a joint effort to at least approach the Vatican and see if we could get some, because one of the things I like about, and I'm not Catholic, and I'm not a practicing person in religion at all, but I like the position that the Pope has taken, and the last 2 popes actually have both been kind of compassionate, and they're actively interested in the well-being of others. Not that others haven't been, but even, if you saw the movie Conclave.
I have not. I've seen 2 popes, but not Conclave.
Conclave is worth seeing simply because it poses, which I think is it poses it as a truth, which I think it is, but some people think it's hypothetical. It suggests that the Catholic clergy are people. Mm-hmm. that they're not gods, that they're people. Even the Pope is a person.
Yeah, he grew up in Chicago. I mean, he's a White Sox fan. He's very down to earth, it seems like, ironically, though he's the Pope.
Right. And they're subject to human things. And so in conclave, you see people who want to be Pope. And when you want to be Pope, some of them pursue that with humility. Some pursue that with aggression.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, and that's just the way we as humans are. And that's our opportunity as humans, is to harness ourselves. And so I'll pick Ken.
Yeah. And so you guys are trying to, what's the venture in the Vatican looking like?
Well, we have done nothing. There's no venture.
Or at least what's the idea?
Yeah, he hasn't even responded to me. So he and I have talked about values-based decision-making, and what he does with his organization now, and it's a global reach, but they support organizations that have sustainable values, that they're built to last, which means they have integrity. They're in it. Organizations that lack integrity can make money for short periods of time, but they can't last. Sustainability requires integrity. Otherwise, it will not last. Every government that ultimately loses its integrity, loses its sovereigns. It will eventually happen. And do we have people who lack integrity in our institutions? Yes. But in general, if those institutions if their integrity gets lost, it's chaos.
Yeah.
And we will really see what it's like when no one trusts what's happening. We don't want that.
Yeah, that's the Why Nations Fail. That I think the authors won the Nobel Prize in business or economics. And I think that was like the main point of their book, is the Why Nations Fails, because their institutions fail, whether it be their judicial system, legislative system, whatever it happens to be.
Well, yes, exactly. And I think I'd be interested. What do you think about the three branch system? I think it's pretty good.
I think on paper it's a phenomenal concept that's been worked over for almost 300 years now. At least, I think the idea was Montesquieu, or one of those Enlightenment thinkers. I think the concept of democracy as a form of government is the best form of government, but because it's built upon the people having the power. But as we talked about earlier, people are fallible, and therefore, if you have a government built upon people, it's going to make mistakes every now and again too. Yeah. That's why I like the idea in our preamble of our Constitution of the more perfect union, because though we are going to be making mistakes every now and again, as long as we're striving
and the operative words are more perfect.
Yes, exactly.
It's just unbelievably true. And I would say that speaks to where we're at. There is no end to better. We can get more perfect.
Yeah.
Because perfect isn't really there.
Exactly. And that's why the concept of more perfect union it's like an asymptote in math. Because you're like math.
Yes.
It's a number that you strive for, but you never attain.
You never get. Exactly right.
So it's an asymptote of a goal.
Right. Exactly right. And the purpose of goals is less about the achievement of the goal and more about the meaning it puts into the actions.
Right.
So I live my life what I do. I am what I do, and so are you.
Yeah. So that's why I just, like, we just had the 4th of July the other day. I absolutely love the 4th of July. It's probably like my top 3 or 2 favorite holidays of the year, because we get to celebrate what America is all about, its founding. And though some people will say, whether it was the past 4 years weren't good or the current administration we have right now isn't good, I think still the 4th of July is not a partisan holiday. It's a collective holiday, because you get to celebrate.
Yes. That's why I like Thanksgiving too.
Exactly. That's basically what we're doing, is you're almost giving thanks to the nation that you live in. So when I had, on the 4th of July, I went for a run at St. John's University because I was back home. And I came away with my 3 things that I was thankful for in America was its ideals, its culture, and then the people that compose all of it too.
That's awesome.
And its natural beauty. That was the 3rd one.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just a great thing to keep in mind. It's a good reflective moment, the
I
4th of
love
July.
that.
Kind of like you drinking your water sort of deal. You
Yeah.
can reflect back.
These are all empty now.
They are all empty.
We've had a good opportunity here. This is so good. I'm so appreciative of being included on your show.
No,
Thank you.
likewise, yes. And I guess with that being said, the final question I have here, which I think, hence the title Youthful Perspectives, you can give some advice to the youth out there that happen to listen to this podcast. What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were 20 years old?
When I was 20, I was just learning to accept something I had learned when I was 19. And when I was 19, I was still at Minnesota Morris, and that was the one psychology class I took in college was my sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I didn't go to class all the time. And what would happen is I'd get the syllabus and I'd make sure I was there for the exams and stuff. But one day I'm in class and so I misused that a little bit. But I remember the teaching assistant, one of the reasons I didn't like it is the professor only was there 2 days, and the teaching assistant did it all after that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, teaching assistant was there, and I learned one thing that day that I've used the rest of my life. I bought into it maybe by age 20, but I learned it at age 19, and then I decided to go ahead and use it a little later. That's a knowing, deciding, doing. Mm-hmm. And here's what it is. You will always have conflict. You're a human being. And when I talked about those gifts earlier, your emotions will create a situation that you cannot avoid conflict in your life. Mm-hmm. However, you can be conflict avoidant, but you will have conflict. And in fact, being conflict avoidance is one of your conflicts. I'm that guy.
Right, yeah, that's a funny way to look at it.
So that's a conflict. So we will always have them. But then they latched onto describing these conflicts. And to save time, I'll just say on one end, they had a whole bunch of different modifications on the way on. But one end, you had avoidance. You're on the 10th floor of a burning building, and you can't run through the fire, or you could either run through the fire or you could jump out the window. Mm-hmm. Or you could sit there and burn to death. That's your choice. That's an avoidance conflict. I don't want to do any of these, mm-hmm. But you got to pick one. The other end is approach. I got to make a choice. I got two good things here to choose. And what I did and what I've done ever since, really, when I made my first company, I started that and started IDS at the same time, basically. And at that time, I decided to do both. And but I could do either or. And then eventually I stepped away for a while from the telemarketing businesses. But I had 3 telemarketing companies before I stepped away. Mm-hmm. One of which I realized I could use the same concept to book appointments for financial professionals, which was a huge bonanza.
I bet.
Yeah, and so I created a separate company that would help that happen. And that was good. And then I did what I did with Minneapolis, what's now Minneapolis St. Paul Magazine, I did in Chicago with North Shore Magazine. We used these long distance lines, and I did St. Paul Magazine. I did Twin Cities Woman Magazine, mm-hmm. And I learned how to make the deal better. With Twin Cities Woman, which doesn't exist anymore, the subscription was $9. And at that time, I had figured out that I was giving way too much money away percentage-wise. So I changed the dollar out of 5 to a nickel out of 9.
Okay.
And it still was good for the magazine, mm-hmm. because they needed subscribers. They needed nickels. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I needed $8.95.
There you go. So it's constantly learning.
It's constant learning and never stops.
Yeah.
So
growth mindset too.
Growth mindset.
You seem to encompass both of those, constantly learning through growth mindset.
Well, the human appetite for growth is insatiable.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? I guess I have one last comment or question.
Yeah.
When you're long gone, what do you hope your gravestone or your tombstone says? Have you ever thought of that?
I think I'll go with what my dad put on his, which is, and yet I'm still learning.
There you go. Encompasses it right there. Lifelong learner. Well, Doug, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Mason.
Thank you for listening to Youthful Perspectives. Though there is much to take away from this enlightening conversation, I believe Doug's pursuit in finding joy in work is something we should all strive for in our own lives. The advent of artificial intelligence may eliminate jobs in the near future, but those who are willing to adapt, are unafraid of change, and are constantly learning will be better suited in discovering joy in this dynamic job market. Doug's prioritization of discovering our personal values is, for me, one of the best things I've done in my life so far. The values card exercise provides you with a roadmap of guiding principles that allows you to navigate the constant conflict we shall endure throughout our lives. As mentioned before, a link to this exercise is in the description. Finally, Doug's mantra surrounding some of the universal values of integrity, responsibility, compassion, and forgiveness provided a unique perspective that I shall continue to ponder moving forward. As he stated, quote, "Integrity in action produces trust. Responsibility in action produces inspiration. Compassion in action produces attraction and retention of the best and brightest. And forgiveness produces innovation." End quote. Such wise words from such a wise man. With that, this is Mason Beerbaum, signing off.